Hello and welcome to this episode with Megan MacNeill. Today we're going to be talking about personal branding. So Megan, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Hey, Kristian, thanks so much for having me. I'm Megan MacNeill. I have a nice Scottish accent, as you can tell, but I'm actually based down in Western Australia, down under. And yeah, no, so I do personal branding. I work with professionals, but I do a lot of work with athletes, and it's about trying to get them ready for off-field activities. What happens once they retire or if injury hits, because it's very easy to get caught up in the athlete lifestyle, and you go full force into that, which you should, because that's your passion. But what happens afterwards, because you don't have, I mean, maybe if you're a golfer, you've got a kind of longer career there, but most of us, if we're athletes, we're going to be retiring in our sort of mid-30s, and we've still got a vast amount of time in front of us. So what are we going to do after that? So the way we position ourselves while we're still on the field is really important. So that's what I work on.
And what led you to becoming or taking up that profession, like what you're doing at the moment?
So I've always worked for not-for-profits and small businesses, and my background's in marketing. But because I've been working in the not-for-profit space, there's never been that much money. So it's always been a lack of money. So you've had to be a little bit creative about how you market the organization. And I just over the years, I found that the easiest way to be able to do that was through the CEO or the chair or the president, whoever the authority figure within the organization was, to be able to try and position them and get a platform for them. That was obvious, that worked much better for the organization than any ads I could ever buy. And I wasn't really aware of it at the time, but what I was doing was building up personal brands for these individuals. So when I decided to start my own business, I was doing outsourced marketing for small businesses and not-for-profits. And it just naturally kind of evolved that it was personal branding, and I sort of decided to just label it what it was. And then I decided that it wasn't just organizations I could help, it was individuals. So it started with corporates, especially young females that were looking for promotions. So you work on their personal brands to try and elevate them and put them in the right position for any opportunities that come up around. And then I was also working with athletes, and I would been working with them more on the side of when I was working for not-for-profits, having them come and speak. They would be speakers, and they would be like a draw card for whatever event I had. And then I started looking at, the ones that we were wanting to get, if they were still playing, there was an obvious reason why we wanted them, because they were still in the spotlight. And some of the ones that were retired that we wanted to speak, they either had something tying them to that organization. So I worked quite a bit in agriculture, so they were maybe from a farming background, so that was their tie to come back in and speak to us. Or it was that they were working on something that was really relevant to the group of people we were working with, and that was a paid opportunity for them. But they were also making money outside of obviously that one gig coming in and speaking to my group. So it just got me thinking about how they position themselves. Yet you have a look around and there's lots of sportsmen that have just disappeared because, they just, once they're retired, that's it for them. So it was just to kind of see, some people want that. Some people want to go back to, have other plans, but some people do want to kind of continue their career. And it's looking at what that looks like once they're off the field.
Great, and then thinking about that branding, what can that do for an individual or for a business by having all this branding and having you work with them?
Yeah, so basically, like a personal brand, any kind of brand, someone has one anyway. So if you're talking about a personal brand, you as an individual has one. It's just whether or not you develop it and work it, and actually give people something to talk about. So if you've got an example of two people, we've got Mark. Mark decides that he doesn't want a personal brand. He doesn't want people talking about him. But the reality is people are still talking about Mark. It's just that what they say is completely wrong because Mark's not giving them any information to work with. Whereas Tom over here, he's decided to give out some information about who he is, and he's only given out about 30% of his life. It's not his whole life. He's just giving out the bits that he wants you to know about. People are still talking about him as well, but they're a little bit more accurate because they've got some content to go on. So basically, you've got no control over your personal brand. Your personal brand is whatever someone thinks or feels or says about you when you're not in the room, but you do have some influence over what it is that they do say, feel, and talk about once you're not there. So that's the important part about personal branding.
Fantastic. So, obviously, this podcast is based around sports therapists. So, what do sports therapists need to know about branding their own businesses or branding themselves in order to make sure that the right perceptions are made?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what business you're in, but sports therapists in particular, because that's such a personal. You're working one on one with people there to be able to help them, and you're helping them with situations. Well, they're really personal to them. It's the difference between maybe being able to play sports at the weekend, or if they work 9 to 5, being able to play with their kids. Like, it doesn't, it depends what level, but it is personal to them because nobody wants to be stuck indoors all the time, do they? So the difference between you and your competitor is you. On paper, you and your competitor that's in the shop next door, you might have the same experience. You've got this, you went to the same uni, got the same qualifications, you've been doing it for the same amount of time. Everything on paper is the exact same. The only difference will be you. So being able to actually put yourself out there and tell people what problem you're solving is a massive difference. And also, you've got to remember that you're not actually selling a service. No one's ever selling a service or a product. You're selling a solution. So what you're doing is you're either taking away pain or you're providing pleasure. So in your case, I'm not a therapist, but I would presume that you are generally taking away pain so that people can then go and enjoy the pleasure, which is their sports, etc.
Excellent. So, in terms of actionable steps that sports therapists can take to improve their branding, what could they be doing on a day-to-day basis?
First up would just be to have a look at who exactly they are trying to help. When you talk to everyone, you talk to no one. So is there a particular type of person that you're wanting to speak to? Is it a rugby player? Is it a football player? Is it someone who plays golf? Is it someone who does yoga? What sport is it they do? Are they male? Are they female? And you need to really know who it is that you're trying to help in order to be able to speak to them. Everyone else will come, but once you're actually speaking to that one person and you can attract them, it just makes everything that you do so much easier. And you also need to be like, it's not for everyone. Like, personal branding is hard. Like, it's easy in the sense that personal branding is an extension of you. So it's just you showing up, but it is really hard to show up, because once you do that, you're putting yourself out there for judgment, or that's what it feels like. And you'd be surprised how many people are behind you and supporting you, but you're always a little bit dubious about that. But yeah, no, my biggest tip would be just put yourself out there, put your face behind what it is you're doing, and know who it is that you're actually speaking to.
And are sports therapists required to be across all social platforms, or
No.
are there specific ones that they should be looking at working on at this moment in time?
No, nobody should be on every single platform. Like, that's a job in itself. Like, if you're running a business, if it's actually your business and you're having to work, a full day in your business as well, being able to maintain every single social media platform it's impossible. I do that for people, and that's a full-time job in itself. You just can't, and you can't be everything to everyone. And also, your personality doesn't suit every platform. Like, by all means, get on everything and see what works. Do a podcast, do a YouTube channel, get TikTok. I've seen some great examples on TikTok recently of chiropractors, that have been hilarious, and psychologists and stuff like that. Anyone can go on any of these platforms. Instagram, Facebook. Everyone's got a Facebook page. I think you just have to have one of them, even if it's stagnant, because like, if you're not on Facebook, do you exist? But to be able to maintain one that you're actually active on, pick one or two, because there's no way that you can do justice to all of them, because you can't, if you're making a piece of content, you can repurpose it to go on different platforms, but you can't put out the exact same content. So find whatever you like using, so you're comfortable there. Start there. And number two, going back to what we just talked about, where you know who it is that you're actually trying to attract. Is it that rugby player, the yoga professional? Who is it that you're actually attracting? Where do they hang out? Where do they consume their information? Because wherever they are is where you need to be.
And in that respect, do we use hashtags on our branding? And if we use the hashtags, does that get us seen more often in different places?
Yeah, hashtags are important on most platforms, Instagram in particular. It's always good to just make sure, if you search in the search bar, you generally can see how many people are actually using it. You don't want to use one that's too crowded, but you don't want to use one that's got like 2 posts on it either. So it's trying to get that happy medium. But you've got like you can use 20 different hashtags in there and find something that works. Use your local area. So for me, I use hashtag Perth Business because that's my area. I use women in business for some of my things because that's what I'm doing as well. So again, if you're attracting if it's a professional yoga player, or not, you're a professional yoga player, there's a new thing. If it's a professional female that enjoys yoga and you're treating her so that she's able to do yoga well, maybe she does a lot of Bikram yoga or something, then yes, that you're going to need to be where she is, and you need to be using hashtags that she's going to be using. So they might be yoga as opposed to physiotherapy, because people don't always know they're looking for you until they're looking for you, if that makes sense. Some platforms don't use it as much. I mean, Facebook, you don't really need it. But LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, they've all got their hashtags. So yeah, they definitely help.
Thanks. I think you've given us some really a lot of food for thought there, because as sports therapists, often we are our own brand. We often go by our name to practice. We are seeing people on a one-to-one basis, depending upon the current pandemic and circumstances around it. So that's really important. If we wanted to find out a little bit more about branding and more about you, Megan, where would we go to?
If you go to my website, which is just www.relevantbusiness.com.au, or you can find me on social media. If you put in Megan MacNeill or Relevant Megan, I come up as well. So yeah, I'm normally floating about there, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
That's excellent, because I'll put all the links on the show notes as well, so the members of the sports therapy community can find all that information and easily access you as well. So thanks very much for speaking to us. It's an absolute pleasure, and you've given us some really important points to have a look at in the future.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed that. That was great.